In this lesson, we'll set up custom parameters to control our foot banking. So this is going to be a two-step process. We first need to create our custom parameters, and then we'll go ahead and use an expression controller to drive the foot banking with those custom parameters. So let's say we go ahead and get started by creating those parameters. Now, with the foot control selected, that's what we're going to add the parameters to. We'll head over to animation, and here's how we can access the dialog that we need to add custom parameters. So we could either do it this way or use the hotkey Alt-1, which I prefer to do because it's a little bit faster. Okay, now that that's done, I actually like to start by creating a category to kind of organize things. So let's actually switch our parameter type to string. And then the name, we'll simply call this foot. Okay, we hit enter, then we can go to testing attribute under that rollout so we can see how that looks. And now we can go to the default text here and give this a description. So we could simply type in extra controls. So someone sees this, they'll know exactly what the attributes or what the parameters are going to do directly underneath this parameter that we're about to add. So now that that's done, we'll go ahead and choose add. And now, heading over to our modify panel, if we were to collapse rendering, selection, geometry, there is our first custom parameter. Alright, and again, it's just for a label. Now let's go ahead and actually add the animatable attribute. So that's going back to our parameter type and choosing float. From there, we'll leave the UI type a spinner. We'll call this bank. For the width, I actually like to set this to 100 so it's not so large. And now from the range, now I like to use a really great range to give the animator as much control as they need. So for the from, I'll actually put in -1000. You may not need to go that far, but just in case. Alright, so from the to, we get there and we can put in +1000. There we have it. So now we can go ahead and choose add. And there it is. Let's say we take care of the right side. Select that control. Again, for the parameter type, that's going to be a string. We head over to the name, and this is going to be labeled foot. Under default text, extra controls. We can choose add. There it is. Now for the animatable attribute, we use float. It's going to be called bank. The range again is going to be -1000. The max +1000. We could also adjust the width to 100 and choose add. Alright, so now we have them set up, and now it's just a matter of going in and adding our expression. So let's start with this left bank controller, or this helper. With that selected, we head over to our motion panel, go to the rotate, open up the 0 Euler XYZ, our frozen list, and there we have it. We can see that the X and Z are locked. Okay, Max clarifies that for us. So we'll select the Y, we'll head over to assign controller and choose float expression. Now I'd like to show you this. If we were to close this out, notice that expression controller is still tied to the Y. So if we were to go ahead and select this, try to move it, notice we can't because it's tied down by a different controller. If you ever want to bring it back to default, simply select the controller, head over to assign controller, and then choose Bezier float. Now it gets converted back and you have full control over that again. Alright, but I'm going to go ahead and head back over to float expression so we can work on this. Now what I like to do is actually make a variable. They save a ton of time because we can tie in our controllers into these variables and just use our short variable names instead of an entire controller name. Alright, so to do this, let's go ahead and create a variable. We'll make it a scalar. Vector is dealing with not only value but also direction, so we don't need to worry about that. Default is scalar. We'll go ahead and type in bank. Choose create. And we want our bank to be set to our bank parameter. So what I like to do from here is just select the foot control so we can quickly find it. Now with bank selected, okay, the bank variable, we head over to assign to controller. We scroll down until we find, there it is, the foot controller. Notice how its icon is highlighted. So from here, we actually want to expand it with the inner plus sign. Go to its object, expand that so we can get to its custom parameter and choose bank. So now that entire bank controller is tied to this small variable. All right, so how are we going to set this up? Well, what we basically need to do is use a condition statement in our expression that says if we move, in this case, the negative direction. I'll show you that. If we were to select this, start to rotate that, notice the direction we want to move in is the negative. Okay, it doesn't have to move to actually see that. As we rotate in that direction, see it's going in the negative direction. So for all of the left sides, we know that we want them to move negative, right, positive. So knowing that, let's say we go over to our expression editor here. We'll zero out everything. We'll go to our function list, and again we want to use a condition. So here it is. If CTF. What that basically means is that our if value, if that is moving in the negative, go ahead and have our bank work. But if not, set that value back to 0. So let's go ahead and see how this all works. All right, I'll choose close. And we'll type in exactly what we saw. That's going to be if, open and close parentheses, followed by C, comma T, comma F. So if our condition, okay, if that bank is equal to negative, go ahead and have that controller move. But if not, bring that back to 0. Okay, and we're going to need to do the same thing on the right side. So let's set this up. It's going to be as follows. If bank, so we'll get rid of the C and replace that with bank, our variable. If that bank is less than or equal to 0, okay, if it's moving in the negative direction, go ahead and have that equal our bank parameter. So all we need to do is type in bank. But if this is not true, go ahead and set that back to 0. So this is really simple. All right. Now let's see what happens here. And again, before we go ahead and evaluate this, what we have here is if our bank is going in the negative direction, less than or equal to 0, then have the bank work. If not, zero out that control, have it not move. We can debug first to make sure there's no errors. Everything's fine. Max will definitely tell us there was. And we'll go ahead and choose evaluate. All right, so watch this. We select our foot control, head over to the modify panel and start to move the bank. Notice how quick that moves. All right, it's working just fine. Notice when we get past 0 going to the positive direction, we can't move it anymore. If it's moving too fast, what we could actually do, go ahead and zero this out, just right clicking on the slider. What we could actually do is actually use a degree to radian function in front of this, in front of our values. And that's going to give us much smoother movement as it converts our values from degrees to radians. All right, so to do this, it's very simple. All we need to do is go to the bank, our true statement, concatenate that by putting that in parentheses. And now before that, we can type in our degree to radian function. So that's lowercase d e g, capital T O, capital R A D. Let's go ahead and copy this. And also have our zero value set to degree to radian. So we'll just paste right in front of the 0. And we'll put that in parentheses. Okay, so we should have 2 at the end. All right, you just want to double check that by going one by one and making sure the parentheses have a start and end. But now watch this. If we evaluate this, close this out, notice now we're getting much smoother movement. This is much nicer than what we had before. All right, so that's the step. I'm going to right click on the slider to zero that out, and we can work on the right side now. All right, so selecting the helper, we simply go to our rotate Y controller, assign a float expression. We make our variable. It's going to be bank, create, assign that to our bank parameter. So again, just select the foot control, go to assign to controller. Should be able to find that. What's nice is that Max actually remembers what we used last, so that saves a lot of time. So we'll just go ahead and choose that bank controller and choose OK, and type in our expression. So again, it's going to be if, open and close parentheses. And if you're just starting this out, go ahead and put the C followed by the T followed by the F, so you know exactly how this condition is going to work. So again, if the C, which is our bank, if that is this time greater than or equal to 0, since we're moving in the positive direction now, have the T, or have our true statement, set to the bank. If not, set that to 0. Following that, we can add our degree to radians. So that's going to be, again, degree to radian or deg to rad, followed by open and close parentheses surrounding the bank. For the 0, again, that's going to be deg to rad, followed by an open and close parentheses. We can debug this. It's fine. Evaluate and test. We always want to get into the habit of testing these. There is our bank, moving very nice. All right, so I'd recommend actually going back through this lesson if you need to and just get solid within your mind exactly what we've done. Okay, working with the expressions, setting up these custom parameters, and then in the end, using these custom parameters to control things like our bank. But definitely get into the habit of working with expressions because they can save a lot of time. We're actually going to be using them a little bit later on. But again, if you need to, just go back over this lesson and get that down packed so you can go ahead and apply that to the right side. By the next lesson, I'll have the right side finished and we can work on our last task for the foot control, which is setting up our toe bend.